Alright, we're back again. In this video, I kind of talk about a couple things. So, with the process that I'm going through here of sanding and using spackle and laying on coats of this sand and seal product, the idea is to eliminate all of the wood grain effect, and I'm just gonna have to try and rely on catching the light there with the camera and the light source that I have in such a way that you can see the wood grain. But anybody's ever painted over wood untreated, aside from the paint, of course, a little bit of sanding, you're still going to see that wood grain showing through. So what I'm trying to do is just eliminate that. What the way I want this painted surface to look when this is all painted up and finished is, I like the surface of a typical aircraft. You know, with the plastic kit, a little sanding, a little polishing, a little paint, and what you have to the eye is something that looks as if it were made of metal of some kind. And that's what I'm trying to achieve with these balsa wood kits, that same look. Also, I get occasional questions on the videos, different videos in the comments, you know, related to flight. Is that airplane going to fly? Can't wait to see it fly, that kind of thing. I don't build, these aren't RC, they're not free flight, they're not rubber band powered. They're just static display models. You know, built to the, well, whatever standard it is that I've achieved after a couple of years of doing this. And that's all they are. And I know I've said in the videos a few times that I'm going for a sort of a hybrid look, something between what the kit engineer was designing and what the actual aircraft is, or you know, what it looks like. So that's what I do. I don't, these aren't flyers. I'm nothing against, obviously, you know, building aircraft that can also fly is a technical achievement, and it's great. You know, and once upon a time I built RC aircraft, and I just got tired of wasting all that time and money and energy on something that might last, you know, maybe 20-30 hours of use, and then be somehow irreparably damaged. That's just me. I mean, I don't want to put this kind of time into something that's temporary. And anymore, you can get these RTF RC aircraft foam kits. They look very nice. Retractable landing gear if that's what you want, or the, you know, the stunt biplane style, nice steerman, nice. There's one company, FMS, making a very nice beach, twin beach. So, and they look very realistic. And for that kind of effort, you know, a couple of minutes screwing them together and making the connections and charging the battery, that, now to me that makes sense. If that's the limit of the time commitment to put it together, then to me that doesn't matter if it rekits itself in a day or two. But for something I put this much time and effort into, to then just, you know, do that, it just doesn't make sense to me. This is, again, just me saying that. So that's why I build these. I build these static display kits, and we hang them here and there, and sometimes somebody wants one of them, and I'll give it away. I have grandkids now, so there's a couple of a couple of these hanging in their room at their house, and it's for, you know, inspiration and entertainment. I don't know, for kids, you know, lying there trying to go to sleep, and there's an F-18 or a Stearman hanging from the ceiling, you know. And maybe they take an interest in that. Maybe they end up with a career in aviation. Who knows? Maybe they decide they want to start building these, or be some other kind of artist. Not that that's what I am. I'm just a guy in his shed killing time, more or less, is the way I look at it. You know, not too much more than that. And I talked about the meditative, the meditation I get out of this, and the, you know, the other aspects of this hobby that help me, or, you know, all that positive mumbo jumbo. And it's true. That's the other reason I do it. But what am I doing? Okay, so what we want to try and do is get this wing to look right to the prototype. So we have an elliptical wing. We have a certain amount of dihedral. That's the V shape. We have an airfoil sort of shape to the underwing side that we did not have from the kit. That's something that, by layering on this extra balsa and then sanding it a certain way, that I've tried to achieve this underwing profile. So now how am I sanding this? What am I doing when I sand this airplane? How many layers of this filler am I going to need, and why isn't it good enough now? It looks pretty smooth and all that stuff. Well, if you look at the ribs here, the wing ribs, you can see that in a few places you can actually see the wing rib, but in most of these we're still looking at filler, right? So we're still a little bit high out here as far as the thickness of this top surface, and we can see exactly where we need to be, and exactly where we still have, you know, somewhere to go. So what I'm still doing is concentrating on the low spots. So we did one hard application of the filler. Hard application means without adding any water or diluting it at all. We just put this paste on directly with the whatever applicator. Here's a newer one. Let's get rid of this one. With the applicator, we just spread it on just like frosting on a cake. Not too thick, but not too thin. Just lay it right in there, pressing it into all of the grooves where we know where they are, and we can see them. But then just covering the airplane with it on top and bottom. I'm staying out of this area. This is going to have the belly pan built in over it. And I'm going to be doing more of this after I get these covered. But for now, I'm just trying to fill the wood grain on the bottom. Fill the wood grain on the bottom, fill the voids and gaps and low spots on the top side of the wing. And because of the mistake I made with attaching the ailerons before it was time, I now have to, each time I apply the filler, I've got to come back in with the X-Acto and carefully cut away the lines before I move these, otherwise it will chip the filler. See a little chip of it right there. So, you know, it's adding a little bit of an extra wrinkle to what would have been a straightforward process if I had left these the way they were. Still been able to remove them. Now I couldn't, you know, again, I couldn't really finish the wing off until I had these installed, so I probably would have just spent the extra time sanding these openings in here. I'll show you this. We're still not quite in unison here because they stick a little bit. And here's what I'm talking about. So by attaching these early, I didn't have time to come back and finish all these surfaces in here, and the two end surfaces and the top surface. This surface here, and I'm probably getting in and out of focus now. This surface here, I won't be able to sand the way I wanted to. These surfaces here on both sides, and also on this side and this side of the flaps on both sides, I won't be able to quite address those the way I would have been able to if I had waited. So what I should have done was completely sanded the flaps and got them, and these surfaces inside here, and got those absolutely ready for paint, and then installed the flaps, and then begun the process of filling and sanding and getting the wing surfaces prepped for paint. So that still would have left me, I suppose, that in hindsight, or whatever, that still would have left me having to clean these slots every time I apply filler. So there's that. But at any rate, that's what I'm doing, is just application after application until all the low spots are gone, sanding and sanding until we can see essentially the top of that wing rib all the way down at every spot, getting that flush all the way down. So then ultimately the only milk white filler you would see would just be at the low spots and not anywhere else, and there wouldn't be much of it to look at once this is smooth. So how many more applications? Well, now a hard application, I just said, was straight from the bucket. The other way I do it is what I call a wet application. So you just put a little bit of water in a bowl and wet your finger and mix, a small amount of this stuff to the consistency of toothpaste, until it's just like a toothpaste, and then just rub it in everywhere. It's like finger painting as opposed to the cake frosting. And you rub that into the grain and into these low spots, constantly working it in until you have the whole surface done. And then when that dries and hardens, taking a much lighter grit of sandpaper, what do I have here, 120? Yeah, using 120 on a sanding block still. We're going to keep using the block. We don't want to create any problems by just using free sanding, just with paper. We want to use a sanding block every time. And just going over it and over it and over it and across the lines this way and this way, around the edges, and reinforcing the leading and trailing edge profiles, keeping those nice and straight the whole time, and sanding it until that layer is completely gone. And at that point, come back and lay in another coat of, brush on another coat of the sand and seal. And for that I use a brush about like so, and we cover the whole surface. Just cover the whole surface, top and bottom, and let that dry. And when that stuff dries onto the filler, it actually helps harden the filler, and that's helpful. It doesn't harden it to the point where it won't sand, but it hardens it to the point where it won't chip or break, shatter, any of that stuff. Makes it nice and resilient. So that's why we like the sand and seal mixed with the Sherwin-Williams spackle paste, the shrink-free spackle paste. That's kind of important. Make sure it's the shrink-free stuff. And then we get that wing formed. Get that thing sanded and get it prepped for paint. Just probably about 5 or 6 wet applications of the filler, and brushed on coats of the sand and seal, with some vigorous sanding in between each application of each of those products, and then we end up with something that looks like solid aluminum, and then that's good because it's still balsa wood underneath, so I can still lay on panel lines if I want to. There are different tips and tricks we'll get to later in subsequent videos about detailing the airplane, getting the paint prepped, and then getting the actual final coats of paint, sanding those and getting that cleaned up, decal application, the whole nine. I'm thinking of a checkerboard pattern on the nose of the aircraft, and the invasion stripes on the underside only. I don't like I probably won't put the invasion stripes over the top, just on the underwing surface, and on the lower fuselage, not over the top of the fuselage. In other words, it's the late war European theater, not the D-Day version, but subsequent to that, the months after. Anyway, that's where we are. That is where we are in the project. You can see that the flaps came out. They look pretty good in the up position, and I'll show you again how they are in the down. Now you're probably picking up a lot of different light and shadow around the flaps and stuff that still has to be cleaned up, but you can see we got nice even symmetrical gappage. Got the flaps down equal extension of the flaps at the full extension. That is full extension. It essentially has two positions that you can set it to. Again, when I get this cleaned up and sanded out, they should operate just from one side. No, I shouldn't have to do this, but that's all right too. They're nice and stiff for now. Keeps them from flipping and flapping around. So, a couple more applications of the filler, some sanding, and then I can get to work on these fairings down here. Get the landing gear doors onto the landing gear legs. Oops, that fell off. So, let's see. I should probably come at it the other way. There we go. There's our landing gear legs. So when these are down, or rather up, landing gear is up, we want the doors to stand off and be flush. So I think we're getting there. We're pretty close. There's been some sanding, and I'm going to do some mock-ups and just see how it looks with this standoff.